Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mine is just a 2 cents. I just want to, maybe I don't know, it's a comment. With the state capture and all these commissions, and like the commoners say, commission. I still remember the Maposa story of Maracana. That is still a commission that is ongoing. So I don't know how long is this commission is going to go on. Because, I don't know if they are scared of Ramaphosa or what is the issue in that. Because, when you talk about the president, then people start to fear. So it's clear that he's also captured by business and, the ones who's got the money. But then I also want to ask you, can't there be also a thing the way you recall him also? Because under his leadership and Zuma, everything is falling apart. And I know when I look at all these entities that's there, it's like they want these entities to fail. And that is also how they outsource all these things where we as the poor have to struggle. If you look at ESCOM failing, if you look at SAA, if you look at all the other, even the, PRASA, that's a very sad part, because so many of our families has lost their job. These bosses who's making money out of how we are working them rich. Our poor workers are losing their jobs because they come late at work, because his trains is not working. We have structures also on the railway because our country and our president can't even build enough houses for our communities. Our communities is staying in our crowded spaces, and they occupy these informal settlements because there's no way that these ones are saying they can't build us houses, but at the end of the day they are stealing all the resources that should go into the poor. So I want to check with you, why can't we recall this president who's failing our community? And all these ones who are still serving on the cabinet, why are they still there? What is the commissioner saying about this? The Zondo must speak to these things.
Exposing the banks and their collusion with apartheid. Because a lot of the truths of what apartheid has done to communities and people at large has been hidden and is still hidden. The second thing is, I'm thinking about it and ask the question, where did this formulation of state capture come in? Who's formulated it? In the revolutionary tradition, you call a spade and not a revolutionary, not a garden implement. This is a capitalist state we live under. It's a special kind of capitalist state because it's a racial capitalist state where black people have been used to extract surplus or to make the farms rich through field labor, slave labor, prison labor, and all that stuff. We know the history. The other thing that we must mention is there's always been a struggle between the forces within the state. We first had, in the early 1900s, English capital, with a struggle with Afrikaner capital. Blacks didn't really feature because they were the bottom end to be exploited. And eventually, by the 48s, you had the Santowns and the Sanlams and all that, and the rise of Afrikaner capital, as opposed to English capital. Now we have the term white monopoly capital, and that's coming out of that. The other thing that we must mention is in all political movements, there's always a struggle between the revolutionary and radical section and the more conservative types. You look in the ANC or the PAC or the BC, the revolutionaries have been sidelined, the radicals have been sidelined, we have conservatives and liberals who basically control the movement. The struggle still continues in those movements because they're not just one group of ideological thinkers. I think someone asked the question about concentrating on a certain aspect of the state. I think we must commit ourselves to the fact, what was said before me, that you have to have a bottom-up struggle. You have to destroy this state, this capitalist state. It's a policy of death. This is what was said. Quoting the Jamaican woman in the World Hall, it's a policy, neoliberal policy is a policy of death. We are burying people. I'm talking about blood and death. So this big orchestra or story up there on the state is important, as you say, we can't, but must go to the other extreme and make that the central theme. The central theme must be much more on the struggles and mobilizing people bottom up to actually find the transition to get rid of the capital state. And this particular set of information proves that it's a corrupt state and that the global capital is a corrupt system. If you look at the thing called the NASDAQ, for instance, it is the capital of crime and the capital of capitalists who don't pay their tax. So we know the whole system is a system of corruption. We don't have to be spending millions to find that out. The question is, how do we change it? And we're not under revolutionary conditions, so it must be a transitional approach to get to the point. And what you were saying is important. The small little battles in our communities mustn't be undermined, because those are the basic stepping stones for the movement that will bring about the fundamental change, what we've all dreamed about, the real freedom we want. So once again, thank you, Mr. Martin, for bringing us here, and all those who have contributed. I think we must continue to grapple, but the more we expose the apartheid regime, the better. Thank you.
No, I just have one point to make, or two at least. No, I wanted to say, comrades, I think it is clear now that a state in itself is a protestation of power. And be it the capitalist class or the middle class, I think it must be clear to all of us that even in our day-to-day struggle, as the working classes, the poor, we are fighting to capture the state so that it can be sympathetic to our cause. But anyway, I just want to pose a question. Like, in the goal of our democracy, there are certain things that have perhaps worked for the system and perhaps they will be beneficial. But now it's been almost 3 decades. I think it's about time we assess the system, we assess our democracy, especially where power lies. Perhaps we have moved too far that certain things no longer work for the general majority of the country. For example, I think we need to question the power that lies in union buildings. I think it's too much. I think for one person to appoint the Chief Justice, appoint the justices, appoint the judge presidents, and appoint the Minister of Justice. I mean, who is going to quality assess who? Because there's an old saying that says, the hand that feeds you controls you. So all I'm saying is that it is one of the questions perhaps we need to start having. Is there, for an example, about us starting to consult and have discussions about decentralization of power within our state? Wouldn't that perhaps be a better route to proceed?
Okay, so Zen, Mike, I'm going to give it back to you just to respond to the questions.
Sorry about that. So I think there are two themes that came out here, and I think they're less questions and more kind of comments that I want to agree with and kind of reiterate. The first one, which was the comments made, the first two comments made, right, is that the nature of power in South Africa over long periods has had disastrous consequences for poor and working class people around the country, right? And just to reiterate that, it's ultimately will go down, I guess, as a small thing, maybe, in the history of the Commission. But the fact that the Zondo Commission so far has left that entirely absent from his reports is really I think it's inexplicable. And I think it's maybe concerning and indicative of the fact that that's something that the Commission didn't grapple with properly. Something we haven't had an opportunity actually to discuss, Zen, is that Zen has worked very closely with the Civil Society Working Group on state capture. And one of the things that that working group said to the Commission very early on is, how will you be creating a space for civil society and social movements to address you on the consequences and costs of state capture? And there was a plan, and that plan never materialized. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the excuse of the difficulties of COVID and what that meant for the Commission. But I think those voices were absent from the Commission, and its findings are going to be the poorer for that, because they are not represented there, and I think that's a huge problem. And then the final point, this has been said, I think, eloquently by several people in the room, but it may be the last thing I'll say as well, because maybe it encapsulates one of the difficulties we have speaking to these issues, is that as investigators at an organization like Open Secrets, we inevitably get dragged into looking at the details of things. And it's important to do, to unpack what happened at South African Airways and who needs to be prosecuted, for example. And that's what the Commission has done as well. But the point is, you can't have a legal or a technical solution to what is ultimately a political problem, right? A political problem needs a political solution. And the Zondo Commission is not going to give it to us. It might help our understanding of one or two instances of what have happened. But as you've said so powerfully, the political solution comes from people's power and reimagining the state and reimagining what's possible to create a just society. And reforming how we do public procurement might help us have more money in the state available, but without much more fundamental changes in the way that money is spent and the way that people are treated in South Africa, that will not change. And so that point, I think, has been made better than I've made it by many people here tonight, but it's maybe one of the takeaways, is that the Zondo Commission, the real kind of political change, it's just one, it provides us some opportunities, but not the be-all and end-all.
Thanks, Mike. I think this is before last comment, right? Just responding to some questions. And I think kicking off from the last comment of what Mike has said, which came from the room, is the Zondo Commission is never going to be the be-all about some of what comes forward. But I think, as Mike mentioned, it would be now to mobilize around a continued implementation of the recommendations, so they're not recommendations for recommendations' sake, so that, you know, there's public pressure to continue that. But I think one of the other things, just, you know, what now, is that there was this moment of validation to say, you know, what we've been saying is not what we've been saying, but has been, you know, proven in a sense, in a quasi-judicial, you know, not non-court of law, but recognized by our legal mechanisms in the country. And I think that that's something of hope to take away in this sense, to say that, you know, it wasn't all for nothing, and it's not all for nothing. There are powers to commissions, and they're not just a waste of taxpayers' money. And when you look at how much a commission costs and how much has been stolen, it's incomparable to what the public now knows and can be placed on record, and what's been revealed in evidence, and can be used by our criminal justice system and by us as activists to take information forward. And I think as much, you know, again, as we've been critical, and we all have been critical, that's something really important to remember about the importance of, you know, what can happen when you have a commission that can operate in good faith to bring information forward and to be the public fact-finding mission body that it's an act to be by law. And I think just to kind of round up some of the questions, I'm not going to repeat what Mike said. You know, he took one of my talking points about civil society collaboration and continued vigilance being the price of our freedom, and the civil society working group and state capture and the work around that. I won't repeat that, but thank you, Mike, for speaking to that. But just to move on from that is to say, I think someone was speaking about neoliberalism and bottom-up change. And I think it's not only about bottom-up change, but it's I think what's evident is when civil society collaborates, bottom-up change needs to be met with top-down change. And I think, you know, when a bottom-up change tries to mobilize and hits a ceiling, there's public frustration and a lack of progress. And I think speaking to how change happens and how we conceptualize of that problem is that both need to happen, not at the same time necessarily, but both are important and both need to happen for change to happen. And so this pressure that we can apply to say we need to hold public institutions and people to and people with power to account is important, and to say that we can't just be pushing against a wall. We need to be pushing with people that are pushing with us, from bottom up to top down. And I think, yeah.
And with that, I'd like to thank, firstly, Mike, Zen, thank you very much for availing yourselves. I think everybody's appreciative for responding to these questions and also giving us things to think about. So thank you very much for coming through. I want to thank all of you here tonight, and to echo the sentiment expressed earlier that it's actually quite nice to meet and convene and to talk politics and the state of South Africa together. The online platforms are important, but it's not the same. So thank you to everyone who came this evening. Thank you very much. This is not the last. We have public seminars, usually on Tuesdays. This was supposed to be the first Tuesday of the month, but it's on the 8th, but the next one will be on the first Tuesday of the month of March. So please do come through, follow us on our socials, and if you'd like to be on the mailing list, please just fill in your details on our register. And lastly, I want to thank the Chisimani team who worked hard to pull this event together. Thank you, Team Chisimani, and good night to everyone. The refreshments are served at in the cafeteria, so you can take the stairs or the lift there. Thank you very much, comrades.